And here we go. We should be live right now. Yes, we are live. Hey guys, Evgeny,
Hi everyone.
Sergey. Small event for you this evening. We decided to make kind of the event regarding how we are operating in this quite turbulent time. Sergey, CTO of PandaDoc, Evgeny, head of agile of PandaDoc. All together, we will discuss a lot of the topics today, especially regarding the PandaDoc structure, culture, and different other things. So this is the charity event, and I will share the requisites you can donate. We stand with Ukraine. Sergey has this beautiful T-shirt. So
yesterday.
I'm looking to have my own. So we are open for the questions, and the questions we will collect in the chat. I will be the one who will be the question keeper. I will track the chat regarding the questions. I will organize them. I will ask Sergey questions, and Sergey will lead the presentation, and I will add some details or clarify some things. So all of the questions will be answered. So don't worry about this. You can also ask tricky questions, and we are looking for the tricky questions fairly soon. And there are some provocative slides in our presentation.
Especially for Scrum community, that's for sure.
Especially for Scrum community, sometimes I will stop sharing my video and will cry, and on some of the slides you will see. But that's the situation we have. So I think we can just start.
All right. Just let me know if you see the full screen right now.
I see the full screen right now. It looks
Alrighty. So hi everyone. My name is Sergey Belarus, and I'm CTO and co-founder of PandaDoc, together with Eugene Labunsky, head of agile practices here at PandaDoc as well. Before we start, I just I know that you're going through the very, very tough time right now. And so with all my heart, I just want to express my support to all of you, to your country. And I think it's very tough time, but you're very strong people and strong nation. So I'm sure you'll go through this and will become even stronger. So on our current topic today, that's connected to everything what's happening right now, because world was a little bit, it was very turbulent over the last 2 years. So with the COVID and with some other things, and today that's what we're going to be talking about. And the way how we approach this is from a perspective how we run design organization, because I think the design and the org and the way how you handle things actually affect how you can efficiently work in such a turbulent times. All right, so let's start. And PandaDoc, unfortunately, we have a track record. We went through a couple very, very hard moments in our history. The moments in the history of our company. And so we started with the COVID-19, as all you experienced as well, which basically transformed the way how the companies work, because before you went to the office and you worked with your colleagues there, you could have like different conversations, and suddenly overnight you went remote and you were trying to adjust like what's happening. Then we went through the very, again, hard moment in our history in the protests in Belarus. So if you don't know, we four people of PandaDoc were jailed in Belarus because of we created initiative to support the law enforcement officers. I couldn't want to participate in the beating people in Belarus. So the 4 people were jailed with the Hawks case in Belarus. 3 of them, they spent, I think, around 2 months there, and 1 spent almost a year in the jail. So happily, right now, they're all out and free and in safety. And now we're going through the war in Ukraine, where we have many people and many people from Belarus actually left for Ukraine, and now they left for other locations. So we got a track record. And when we look at all those cases, just to give you a sense how we handled them and rebounded to the similar level of productivity we had before, and we analyzed all those cases, and what we see is that we're actually pretty quickly rebounded, and it did not affect the organization like significantly to a point where it's basically collapsed and like you handle so many problems. So with the COVID-19, roughly we had 450 people altogether at the company. We had all the pandas worldwide, 3 offices, and when the COVID hit, basically it affected everyone. And so all the functions were affected. Today, we're mostly going to be talking about the R&D. By R&D, I mean product and engineering, because that's what my area of responsibility, and Eugene works with me on this as well. So we're analyze this part. So we're not going into marketing, sales, and some other functions. They have their own challenges and their own like processes. So we're talking about R&D. And it took us 6 weeks to rebound to a similar level of productivity. And we actually measured the number of stories, like what we produced, and was like a huge decline. And people were like, okay, what do I do now? Like, I don't go to the office, like, how do I adjust? And so it took 6 weeks, like 3 sprints, when we're like slowly got back to the same level of productivity we had before, which in our opinion was fairly quickly. We were surprised. So with the protests in Belarus, back in that time, we had roughly 600 pandas altogether. We had, again, 3 offices at that time, still not closed, and like roughly 10 locations. And so with the Belarus case, 230 people were affected when we had an office in Belarus, and with the 230 employees there. So 60-70% of all these people left immediately Belarus for different countries, including Ukraine, while we kind of were working on damage control. And so you imagine that it's a very turbulent time when you left the country. So you still need to work. You still need to figure out like where to live in Ukraine, because like you left overnight. That's pretty hard. And so what we saw on our side, that it took like roughly 8 weeks to rebound to the similar level of productivity in R&D. Again, we measured by the number of stories and how the people engage, etc. So, and the war in Ukraine still ongoing very early to say. And this is like, again, this is a much worse in our opinion situation, because it's war. And so right now, our current case is we have roughly 740 people. Now we have 5 offices. By offices now, I mean locations, like the official locations. And why 5? Because when we left Belarus, we opened multiple offices outside of Belarus in Ukraine, Poland, and Portugal. And so we needed to rebalance everything. And now we have many people working from very different locations remotely. It's more than 30 locations. So, but when the war started, so we had 180 people in Ukraine, and roughly 55% left, and the 45% they're still in Ukraine. And so we are kind of like, it's still ongoing, obviously. And so we're analyzing that after 6 weeks, like roughly 3 sprints, so we rebound to the 60-70% of the capacity. You also need to understand that we are very, like supportive in terms of the way how we work with employees. If they want to volunteer, if they want to take some time off, if they want to do stuff they need to do, they're like 100% free to do whatever they need in this very turbulent time. but the people like pay respect back to the company and they try to work and try to help the company as well. So it's still early to say, but we can still analyze the current capacity, and we're roughly at 60-70% of what we had before.
It's going up, fair to say. So
it is going up. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is going. Right. So now, so what we think is this, and what we see on our side, so that despite of all the challenges and kind of like instability what we're seeing externally, our organization actually showing a lot of resilience. And so we see that we rebound back very quickly to the very close to normal productivity, right? The way how we work, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason why, in my opinion, that's because the way how we design the organization and how we organize the work. And so with this presentation, we wanted to share this framework, if you will, with you guys. That's going to be a little bit high level, but we can dive into any details you have about any particular moment and any particular part of the framework. But I think it will help you to understand how we actually approach this design question. So let's get started. So we'll start with the anatomy of the organization. And why it is important, because the way how you think about this, the organization, at a certain point, as a C-level, as the manager, as the leader, your job becomes to design organization, not to design the product, not to design the process, not to design like architecture. You become the architect of the organization. And the way how you design it, that's the way how it's going to react to those external events which are happening, war and everything, right? And in my opinion, I'm kind of like, the way how I think about this is I split this into 4 important pieces, which in my opinion, again, affect the way how you handle those things. So the first is structure. In no particular order, the structure, the culture, goals, and the goal setting process, and how you work with them, and enablement, which allows your organization to function. And we'll talk about those 4 pieces, the way how we think about them, and the way how we do this at PandaDoc. Eugene, anything from you?
No, I will add details inside. So let's move on.
Sounds good. So let's start. So the 4 pillars of the org design and the way we handle this culture, you can think about this as the bonding element. And that's why the people stay, even the world around is crashing. And so they have this like personal connection and why they work at your company. The structure, you can think about this as how you can actually package your ideas and how you can turn this into this org design into the structure, right? So if you have the ideas of autonomy, independence, or centralization or decentralization, so you can achieve this with the proper structure. So the enablement is the function which allows your team to focus on the main business objective and don't be distracted by all other organizational teams, because the organizational needs, because you can imagine if you are an organization of 750 people, there are some processes and you need to follow some rules, but we don't want to distract you by all those rules. We want to help you to go through them really quickly. And the goals, obviously. Like, I mean, if the team doesn't have a goal, they don't know like where to go, right? So the goal setting process is also important and a piece of this org design. Okay, now let's talk about all those elements. Eugene, you wanted to add something here?
Yeah, I want to add one small thing. When we're talking about the structure is also having some goals, because like when you design the organizational structure, it should also lead to something at the end. And for example, from our side, the structure, we're optimizing for adaptiveness. So we are looking for the possibility to change the priorities, changing the goals, and our structure should be adaptive of doing this. Sergey will speak about some of the elements, and I will add more regarding the structure. But when we will speak about the structural goals, that's something another than the point 4 here. So in the point four, we are saying about the organizational goals, what we are doing as the organization, but there are some other goals inside this the skeleton.
Yeah, definitely. And by no any means, what we're going to be talking today is the right approach. Full disclaimer. It's not a right approach.
You cannot copy and paste it. You will not be able to copy and paste.
That's the way how we do this. And it's also moving target because it's changing all the time. And actually, we'll talk about like some of the changes we're doing and what we're seeing, like the pros and cons. But it's not the final destination where, oh my God, we're so happy with everything that we don't want to touch anything, right? All right, so let's talk about the culture. So the PandaDoc is actually known for culture. And the reason why, because back in the days, Nikita and I, so we created this culture code document. And we also very clearly articulated the mission and vision. Just to give you a sense, what is that? So the mission is, our mission is help innovative organizations scale and win by eliminating workflow inefficiencies and bureaucracy. Very ambitious goal to fight bureaucracy in the world, especially in B2B, right? And the way how we're doing this is we're building the most intuitive platform that automates agreements, transactions, and other document-driven workflows. And you can relate to this mission if you, for example, don't like to deal with the documents and bureaucracy. Probably PandaDoc is the company where you can find yourself, right? Also, we wrote this culture code back in the days with the first three main core values, but then we added one more. So which is the learn, make impact, have fun, and empathy. So we did this back in the days because we had, so we didn't do this because, like some other companies do this. So let us do this as well. You know, like let us write this mission, vision, and core values. I actually had a problem. And this problem was back in the days in San Francisco when we started hiring the first execs. We hired them, but then like it didn't work out. Where clearly you see this, like we're speaking like very different languages. So they're talking about the, you know, like I need to spend 100K budget on the sales force back in the days when we had like only 50 people in the company, right? And we're like, what is not working? Like we have like a very different kind of mental models. And so what we tried to do is we wrote this culture code, which explains who we like work with and who we don't like to work with. You can think about this like as characteristics of the person who will feed the PandaDoc and who will not feed the PandaDoc. And so we came up with the three core values: learn, make impact, and have fun, because it was foundational when we started. So we wanted to learn a lot of things. We also wanted to create the global company, and you spend most of the time at work. Obviously, you want to have fun, right? And later we added empathy because it was we were going like through the very tough time. Like 3 years ago, we kind of like want to be empathetic to our customers when we started focusing more on the customers, also internals, employees, and now it's a part of the culture code. And you can think about the culture code as the filter to the higher right people. And so many people ask, like, okay, I mean, I do have culture code, like how does it help? So it actually helps to attract the people you feel they're right for your culture and the way how you think and the way how you approach things, your mentality. And it's just a natural filter which you start using in hiring. So we have actually a special step in the hiring process, which is the cultural cultural fit interview. And so we approach this from this perspective. And what you'll find later that this culture and this culture code, it's present in your decisions. So when you make decisions, you're guided by those principles. That's funny, like how it works, but it works. And so if you stated this and if you truly believe in this, like then when you make decisions, you can explain that, hey, this decision because of it fits our culture code. And just to give you a little bit, of ideas how it works. So for example, learn. So we have a full org transparency. What it means, like all the people know our numbers, revenue, how we're growing, all the metrics, etc., etc. And the reason why, because again, back in the days, we wanted that all the people learn how the business functions. So when they leave PandaDoc, they can launch their own business, or they can change the function later within the company if they want to change the career paths. So it was very intentional that we did this just to drive this learning element of the culture code, or like different educational programs, or budgets for education, books, etc., etc. This is part of this. Make an impact. That's a very high level of independence, that you can make a decision and be responsible for this decision. And it can be very impactful, which also can change the compensation and the stock package and some other things. And so experimentation comes as a piece of this. So we try to do a lot of experimentation as a part of the organization. Have fun. So the people first. We had the best parties in the town back in the days when we were in the town. Now it's all Zoom, but we're still trying to make it fun, like that, just different activities. And also been trying to be very approachable, that we don't have this like hierarchy. It's just fun, like you can talk to anyone or everyone. And the empathy is the main element here right now, especially. Needed for this tough time. And this is a creative, like safe environment for employees, being empathetic to what they're going through. And so we just recently had a conversation about, somebody brought up a case when the company fired a girl from Ukraine because she couldn't work. She couldn't work full time. We're like, how is it even possible? Like how can you even think about this 100% dedication to work if there's a war in your country? So what we did on our side, for example, we were very explicit that, hey guys, you work as much as you can work. When you're working, you're helping company and we'll be helping you. But if there is no way for you to work, or like your mind is not there, so you need to support your parents, take all the time, and it's not going to affect your salary in any way. If you're going to volunteer, the space is yours. We'll be paying your salary. And some of those things, like it's manifested in your decisions. Eugene.
Yeah, there is a question that is related to what you already told. It's like, that's impossible to filter by culture, everything during the hiring interview. People is just curious, are we going to have any other filters during the work time? And
I think obviously you won't be able to filter everything within an hour, like conversation, and you're absolutely right. We have a trial period, which is 3 months, pretty long, in my opinion, and maybe not even typical, but what we do, and we treat this trial period as the real trial period. It's not just, okay, so you have this like for legal purposes, but nobody is going to be evaluating your performance. And we let some people go within the first months when we see it doesn't work, like we made a mistake. And so we let some people go. But in many cases, actually works really well, because when you also a part of, the culture code, and you have this DNA in you, and you talk to the person, you immediately see if you fit, it's a fit or not. Like it's a very natural, like
you just feel it.
Yeah, you just feel it. Sometimes we made mistakes, but then we correct them and also learn based on this.
Yeah. Do we share the information with the employee on potential new projects? I think this is on potential new products ideas in our case. And yes, guys, we are sharing everything we have just in the time we decided to share it. So we are not hiding anything.
Yeah, there is only things which we don't share is individual compensation, because it's an individual information.
Not yet.
I'm not sure if we'll come to the full transparency here, but and then like all the plans, all the ideas, you also need to understand they're not coming from us, that, oh my God, we have an amazing idea and we keep it in secret and then we'll launch this. Like in many cases, it's coming from the teams, and it's just, it's a cross-pollination process. All right, let's move on. Eugene, we need to do a time check. So how does the culture code and the culture helps you? I mean, it's in my opinion, there's three main things. It's attracting top talent. At a certain point, people start choosing who to work with, and the money becomes not the number one motivator for them. And so they look at the product, at the people they work with, at the just like development and learning opportunities. And I think culture is a good reflection of what you're doing internally. It's also retention on your talent. So when we were talking about the protests in Belarus, so imagine 150 people need to leave overnight, then live somewhere like in other countries, like for a couple of weeks until like was settled, and then some return, some move, that's a huge stress. We didn't lose a single person. Actually, we lost one person, but before we didn't lose a single person because of that. And to me, it's a part of the way how we handle, and it's actually a part of the culture because people also, like supportive of the company, and they understand that we're going through the tough time. And then developing your talent, also very important, how they can get successful and get the next level career for them as well. So that was a little bit about culture and the culture code and the way how we handle. If you have more questions, put them in the chat and we'll talk about them specifically when we move into the Q&A. Now let's talk about structure. And that's where Eugene will help me a lot. So the way how we treat structure right now, again, specifically talking about the R&D, that the team is an atomic unit for us, an atomic building block. There's like a minimal building block. So we're not trying to get on the individual level. Hey, like 3 developers will be working on this, like 1 developer will be working on this. It's a full team. The team, they're autonomous and they can deliver end-to-end value. What it means, they can work with product managers and designers, like design the solution, develop this, test, put this in production, and show this to the customer. So this is the team.
Yeah, and here is important to say that this is the customer end-to-end value. That's not some part of the system or component or some element. This is like full going solution, any element from the backlog by any team.
Yeah. So usually the composition is the following: 5-6 engineers. So we used to have QAs as a part of the team as well. Now we're moving more like an automated quality assurance part where the team, the whole, is responsible for this. All of them, the funny thing is like all of them, they have a pretty cute names. Like I put the capybaras, you can guess like what they're working on, like what part of the product and the values of the customers, but they have like a pretty cool names as well. So again, team is the atomic unit. The team, and why we decided to go with the teams, because the team, it's a long-lived structure. What it means is we are not shuffling the people from the teams all the time. So it's a very stable structure. What it means is that the social connections you build in the teams, it actually helps you to overcome this external turbulence, because you know the people, you're very comfortable with them, you work with them, and you don't change your environment. And like this stability is very important in the instability which are external. And we stopped. We actually never optimized, but we stopped optimizing at certain point around the location, because sometimes what you do with the teams, like you're here in Kiev, then like it's a team here, that's a team here, it's a team here. We stopped optimizing on the location, language, and culture, and start mixing people up. So there is a good chance that there is a team, a couple people in Ukraine. Well, it was before, a couple people in Belarus. Now a couple people probably in Georgia, maybe one in Armenia, then someone in Poland, and someone in Portugal. There's a good chance that there are such teams.
And 2 of them are native speakers, like English speakers.
Yeah. And also this composition, like from one side, it's not optimized, because when you do this like local optimization, hey, like you're sitting here, like you speak the same language, so you can figure this out. From one side is like you're not optimizing for this, but then what you optimize for is this stability, because all those people, they're in different environment, and it makes this overall environment kind of average, like when something is burning here, it's not burning here, and they align and help each other, because those people where it's not burning, they can help other people, right? So the risk level is slightly different, and it's been actually a good experiment. It's been working well. Eugene, want to add something here?
Our teams are self-managed. There's the question in the chat regarding this. Our team is self-managed. There is no, I don't know whom you mean under PMs. So definitely we don't have project managers at all in the R&D organization. But like teams are not linked to a particular product manager. So the product manager are also like another kind of a unit, but Sergey will tell about this a bit later. But there is no attachment between the product managers and the team. Any team can work with any product manager.
Yep. So they can work with different PMs on the different projects as well. All right, so that's the slide where I'm kind of like on the edge, but the way how I describe the process, it's a mix of Scrum and common sense to me. Like, so you just like using the common sense how you organize the work. And so what we did back in the days when we just started, embracing this process is we had those teams, autonomous teams, and we had a unified backlog, which was like a workflow. We had a unified backlog. The teams were working on the different pieces. They could potentially touch any part of the application as well. So we removed all the dependencies to the experts. Like, it was pretty painful, but I think we went through this eventually. And any team can work with any PM, and we're doing like constant prioritization of the backlog for the whole product. When we started growing, it became a pretty complex thing, because now imagine if you're going from the 12 teams to 40 teams. And so we're talking about 250 people only in engineering. Then product is additional 80, right? And if you could imagine this, like the prioritization call with a bunch of PMs like pushing for these ideas, the engineering is pushing, hey, we need to fix some bugs, and here's the technical debt. It was pretty intense. And so what happened is, when we started getting the scale, the cognitive load to the particular team started increasing significantly, because we have a pretty big system. So it might look small on the surface, like a document, but like there is so many things inside. And so what happened is, like, a particular team, they couldn't tell, like, okay, I'm going to be working on this tomorrow, or on this tomorrow. I don't know this part. Like, I'm not familiar with this. I've never worked with this PM. And so we started seeing is like a lack of engagement, because we started hearing from the team is like it doesn't matter like what I'll do, because like in the sprint, I'll probably working on something different. And we started thinking, like, how can we combine this agility, like, and flexibility into how we can handle those different things with this a little bit longer outlook, that you can think about this piece, like longer term. So you personally attach to this, and you don't break those social connections all the time, right? Because I've been working with this PM, I love this, it was amazing. Now it's this one, it's a different style, like you need to adjust, but then in 2 sprints you go to somewhere else. It was a little bit hard. So what we did, this is controversial, but that's what we did. Given some context here. So the context switching is expensive. That's what I talked about. The lack of ownership and engagement, because they didn't attach themselves to this long-term outlook. They didn't have a clear area of responsibility, which great for flexibility, but not very good like for maintainability of some of the things, right? Because you did something and move on, you did something and move on. We were trying to find a formula, like how to embrace this like ownership without locking you to a specific thing. And the change in social connections. And also it was a little bit hard because we had very, very big application. So what we did, we introduced tracks as the way to scale the structure and as the way to level down this cognitive load to a certain area. And we'll talk about the areas. And then maybe preserve those connections and a longer term outlook a little bit more to specific set of teams, right? And so we split our structure into 6 tracks. And usually track is just 4 or 5 teams, 4 or 5 teams working on something.
Some of them are bigger, like 8 teams.
Yeah, some of them are bigger, some of them they're a little bit smaller, but they have like a vision for each of the track. And the way how we fix this problem with the cognitive load and all the things I mentioned before is like we split them, and so we'll let them handle the work in the same way as we did when we were smaller, but in this particular area in this particular track. So we basically cloned those organizations within the bigger organization. Now yeah.
One small addition. For those who is interested in the chat, so we are using this large scale Scrum framework, known also less. So I will share the link that was called in less product area. So I will share with you how some readings for the inspiration.
Yep. So we didn't come up with this. There's such thing. It's legit. All right. So what is the track? So the track, you can think about the track as the set of teams with the unified focus or vision. So the track usually consists of 4 or 6 teams. We have some tracks with 8. We have some smaller tracks, but we tend to, when we introduce a new track, so we tend to fund this with like at least 1-2 teams, because usually then it's very hard to spin it off. So the track has a leadership team. And again, this is the way to scale operations, because you can't work with every single team, with every single PM when you're growing, and you need to scale this structure somehow. From one side, you don't want to introduce the hierarchy, because the hierarchy will kill like all the, like creativity, and it creates like a lot of barriers. From the second, so you want to create something which helps you to communicate with the organization, but not on the very horizontal level, and keep someone accountable around some metrics, maybe deliverables and some other things, right? So we introduced this idea of the track leadership, which consists of 4 main roles: product leader, engineering leader, design leader, and Scrum master, or like a lead Scrum master or group Scrum master who's also managing other people. And for the product leader, there might be multiple product managers in the track managed by this person. For engineering leaders, multiple EMs managed by this person. For design, multiple designers. And for Scrum, multiple Scrum masters. Another, again, this is a $1 million question. How do you split tracks? So what we learned the hard way on our own example is when we have a very clearly defined, independent and logically separated application part, and I'll talk in a second what it is, or clearly defined set of metrics, which we can give as the vision and the North Star and the metrics and the success measurement for the tracks, it works well. If they have a very vague, like understanding, hey, like you're going to be working on that, it just does not work. And it's actually either or. If you start mixing, it's like, hey, you're responsible for this. You need to like move all those like metrics and all. Like they start like losing. It's very hard for them to focus. So just to name the tracks we have, so we have a growth track, and they're obviously focusing on the growth, like couple metrics in the funnel, which they are constantly looking at day to day. So this is most focused is the usability of the day-to-day usage in the application across the app, but mostly in the particular areas where we see most of the activities of the users, as well as the activation. The document as an app, they're working on this core element of the vision for the platform. And so what we do is we do the smart documents, and they're building this this piece. They also have a set of metrics around this, but this is like their vision. So they are pushing for this vision. So we have an ecosystem track, and the main goal is to enable external parties to integrate into the PandaDoc and expand our ecosystem footprint. Solutions, they're focusing on the different vertical solutions on top of the platform and how they build this, again, with their own set of metrics. Recently introduced SaaS Foundation, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and the platform which enables this too, and we'll talk about this a little bit too. That's a track. So now this 1 million question. When we started like splitting those tracks, like we had some problems, because if you split those tracks very specifically, then what happens is they don't have wiggle room, and they start to optimize for this specific area. And what happens in other businesses, like you moved on and you need to change priorities, but this track, they're optimizing for this area. And if it's pretty small, then you're going to be losing a lot of like resource and efforts onto something which might not translate into the most impact to the company, right? If you give like a metric which is very, very like wide, they are lost because they don't know like what to focus on. And they start doing something, but they don't bring any impact. Yes, it's a very wide surface and area, but they can't make an impact. And so what we'll learn again for ourselves is like, if we separate a pretty big area, which we think is the critical to the vision of the application, and we know that it's going to be a lot of work there, we can dedicate a track to this area. So usually it's fairly independent when ecosystem, for example, or document as an app, they're working on this. It's a fairly independent, it's huge and big. So they have a wiggle room to do different things there, right? And they also have a set of success criteria. Or this is a specific metric. For the growth, for example, it's 3 metrics. It's monetization, some conversion rates, activation, and the trials. Top of the funnel, and they can structure it internally into, hey, we want to prioritize more for this metric this quarter. So, okay, like 6 teams are going to be working on those things. They have this flexibility inside, but then it also becomes very clear for them, like what to focus on. And this is a challenge because we went through this exercise like a couple of years ago when we had a very, very tight and small areas, and we've seen a lot of local optimization. Is it the best setup? I don't know, probably not. And we're going to be swinging back and forth, maybe changing some focuses for the tracks, maybe reorganizing, because it's not set in stone for us. And that's what we message our team is like, hey, don't take this like structure as defined for the years. That's not the case. We may change, and there is some reshuffling, some other things, but it's more or less like long-term setup, at least for the year and a half, maybe even 2 for some tracks when we see like a lot of investment needed in particular area.
And what is important, we can also reallocate teams between tracks if we need to make the temporary empowerment in one of the area of the product.
Yeah. All right. So how does it help to scale? So we talked a little bit about this like leadership team, but essentially you start having alignment, not with all the PMs, all the Scrum Masters, all the teams, but with the representatives of those teams, right? And I mean, not necessarily very horizontal, but helps you to scale because we have, if we have 6 tracks, we have at least 25 people in those leadership teams. Like on top of this, like 5 more people from the broader management team, we have a 30 people consensus. Based on your experience, you can probably relate how to get the consensus in such a big group. That's why we try to separate them a little bit and give more independence, but still create this alignment. So in my opinion, Eugene might have a different opinion here, but in my opinion, the pros is like, I think it's a greater scalability, it's more clear focus and responsibilities, so you can actually enforce responsibility. It's a long-lived social connections as well within a track, and easier managing and independent. The cons, obviously, it's a trade-off. It's a more rigid, it's harder to pivot, because when you start talking about, hey, like probably we should reallocate this team to this, it becomes hard. Like it's that's your track, that's our team.
That's our team, that's our priorities.
Exactly. We have like tons of ideas like we want to work on. And the isolation. This is a swinging problem. The isolation might be increasing and then decreasing, but you can manage the isolation by refocusing them constantly on what's more important on the org. And that's on this level of alignment, that's where it happens.
Guys, all of this cons is also the result of the scale. If you're not scaling, you will not have these problems. You can have one track, one backlog, everything will be fine. The problems came with scale. And there is one question regarding the tracks. Is there any cross-track dependencies? We don't have cross-track dependencies on the technical level. That's because the tracks is not around the IT infrastructure or components. So they are not securing the code behind the track. The code is still shared between the tracks. So that's more related to the business or the metric we are driving. So there is no dependencies. So you are not waiting in team A for the team B in the other track.
Yep. All right, let's move on. And it's actually a great gateway into enablement, because we just partially touched this question. Okay, but what if they need to wait for something from other teams? So imagine that you have 40 teams working. Great talent, so you have an amazing plan, and what you say to them is like, okay, go ahead, start doing this. So this is a typical work. Again, it's maybe not capturing everything, but it's a typical work required to start something new. So you develop a new feature, like it's going to be a new microservice. So what you need to do a customer resource, and then you do design and architecture, then infrastructure should be provisioned. Then you need to create the microservice there, like set up everything. So maybe security review you have as a part of the process. Then you go and develop this, then you test, then you roll out, then you measure and analyze and monitor what's happening, and then you an announcement on the product side. I missed maybe some steps, but you got the idea that there's a lot of things you need to do in order to start something. And in those things is actually a lot of the steps you do, they're very repetitive. And those repetitive steps, they're very good to be moved into a slightly separate organization to enable your team to focus on the actually not important, but like the business value-driven work versus on the preparation work. From one side. From another side is, if you try to unify some things, there is no worse way to do this. Is like to go and give it to all the teams and expect that it's going to be unified. That's going to be different. And it becomes important when you have like certain security requirements, like infrastructure requirements, some other things. It becomes like really important and very hard to manage. So this a fundamental difference in those two organizations. An organization who works on the business value and an organization who enables the teams to work on the business value. The organization who works on the business value, to me, the best way is to organize this as decentralized. So through tons of ideas, you can reshuffle, you can work on different things. But the organization who focuses on the enablement. And what I mean by enablement, infrastructure, frameworks, practices, architecture, it's better to be centralized. And the reason why, because you enforce certain rules, right? Now, centralized, maybe that's not the word you like in this community, but the way how you provide this, you can think about this as the product to the rest of the organization. And we started thinking more and more about our services and the things we do internally as a product with the very different customers, internal developers, right? And so we'll talk about this, and we'll talk about the teams we have in this enablement function in the org, and why it's been pretty successful to us. All right. So the couple things how we do enablement on our org level. So we introduced, in the very beginning, we introduced a platform track. And the platform track, they have like a different teams inside the track. And four main things is the infrastructure and development operations, development experience, automation performance QA, and security operations. So this track sets this like stage for you to work in our environment. Infra and DevOps, obviously, they're managing infrastructure, making sure that it's running smoothly, optimizing for spend, optimizing for security, all the best practices and everything. You're staying on top of this. And the developers, there are users of the infrastructure. And that's the way how we try to build our relationships. So there is no dependencies that, hey, we expect you to provision the service. Go and provision yourself, but we create a tool for this provisioning, right? Or a process to provision this. So, and they should think in this paradigm, like how to enable the teams as the product, not to just do the job, you know? Same thing with the developer experience. So we realized back in the days, it's like, hey, we're reinventing the wheel from time to time, not from time to time, but always pretty much. You know? And so if we don't try to standardize some things, like we'll keep reinventing the wheel, but also reinventing the wheel, it takes time. You know, like, especially for new people, especially with our growth, you know, like we need to enable everyone. Everyone has different opinion and all this stuff. So what we did is like we created a team to empower our teams to use the different tool sets to do their job more efficiently. And what I'm talking about, the microservice frameworks that we built internally, the login and monitoring approaches, the tool set you use, the error handling. Some of the, like we're working on the cool tools, maybe we'll eventually open source, like how you enforce a certain criteria for the microservices, scaffolding, like local development and some other things. So those that just give you tools, and they are like a product team working with the developer as the customer, and they're given this tool, and the developers can be more independent, more efficient, and solve their problems without like actually going and talking to them. Same with the automation and performance. They're creating frameworks to do this and put this in our pipelines to automatically test this and all this stuff. And security operations, they're also working on the tool set and the practices, how to introduce this into SDLC process. Jen?
Yeah, what is important, right? So the platform is not the development teams who is working on some components and getting the requests from the other teams, like it's usually done in the other companies, like, for example, payment platform that's building unified solution. So the other teams is doing this. So this one is clearly trying to make the life of the average developer simple, happy, with the tools required, with the everything that he or she needed to perform the development.
Yep. I think we need to speed up a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. Product operations. We also have this thing on the product side. And so what we do there, so we are optimizing the customer research as a service. So we're optimizing the product data analytics as a service, and some copywriting as well, building the processes to scale. We also recently introduced the architecture console. Again, this is only relevant when you scale, but what happens with the tracks, it's still you get this isolation and independence. And what happens, like over time, they lose the full picture of the whole organization, because you need to constantly keep the vision, the picture of everything what's happened in the head, which increases the cognitive load. So to solve this problem and get this alignment and see dependencies between things like who's doing what. So we introduced this architecture console recently, was just like a nomination from a different tracks on the developers working on the critical projects or like important pieces or some services to be a part of this architecture console to see where the overall vision of the company is going and to get this context. So when they make a local decision, they do have this context, so this decision can be made like better or more scalable. And the last piece, which we're still working on, which is the SaaS Foundation. So on the company level, we made a decision to move into more like a multi-product, multi-module environment. Right, so it's not just a single app, it's going to be the suite of the apps. If you think about the suite of the apps, those apps probably will be using some of the same elements. And what happens if you start scaling and adding more components? So we just recently launched a new product called PandaDoc Notary. It's a notarization platform to do a notarization in US. It's a video chat, like where you sign the documents together with the notary and you can notarize documents. And so when we started working on this platform, we immediately saw dependencies on the shared elements in the app. And what happened is, okay, notary, like we need to introduce a volume billing for our sessions. How we do this? We do this on our own. Then we see that, oh, document as an app is actually introducing the volume billing for SMS verification. Or we're actually seeing that the solutions are introducing the volume billing for forms, right? Guess what's going to happen? They will do a 3 different implementation of all these things. Then the growers come and say, hey guys, we want to experiment a little bit with the volume, but it doesn't work the way how we need to work. And so what we started seeing is like, if the company moving in the direction of this multi-product, we actually may have a product internally which should be supporting those multi-products and providing those services. Again, not as a development services, like what you see, hey, you're responsible for billing, you're writing billing, like then go and write me this, code for volume billing. The way how we should think is like, hey, it's isolation. I build the product. My customers are external teams, and they use the API, the components, some other things, and they can plug into my system. It's still very, very early in the days, so we just staffed this team. We'll see how it goes. This is a potentially risky zone with the dependencies. And so we'll be managing and looking at this, how it works. Do you want to add here?
Yeah, that's a challenging stuff, right? So when you start centralizing the development, what Sergey told, like we may end up with the queues, and that's usually end up with the queues, delays, and we will see how it will go. As we have, guys, pretty dynamic structure, we may see that it doesn't work for us, or it brings more problem. And then we will restructure it to something else. But this is the experiment we are currently running, and there will be more experiments that kind of, not a good one from the first look. This one is usually ending up in the wrong way with the fantastic dependencies, fantastic use. Everyone is unhappy. And this team that is working on such components, they're dying of the requests. Let's see how we will handle this and what we're going to see. So we will share this experience.
Yep.
But for now, it's just one way of doing.
Just an experiment. All right.
Yep.
So now moving into the last piece, but not least, is the goal and goal setting process. So a little flashback back to your school days. So remember this, the vector addition and how you handle this. Like there are 2 vectors, you need to sum them up, and there is a resultant vector pointing in some sort of a direction depending on the direction of the vectors. So this is how I actually think about the alignment in the org. Imagine if you have tracks. The tracks are the vectors. or pointing in the direction where the company wants to go. And the length of the vector is the impact they're actually making to this business goal. If you have a low alignment and your track is doing like something which they might think, like very important, but it's actually not very important for the company direction and what you're trying to solve at the business level, these vectors are pointing in a completely different direction. And if you sum up all this impact, which you get from the tracks, the resultant vector is going to be pointing somewhere, not necessarily in the way where the company is going, and it's going to be shorter. If you try to align that all the tracks, they're actually focused on this like business value and the goal of the company trying to achieve. So what you get is the vectors are pointing almost in the same directions or like similar directions. And then your resultant vector and impact to the business is going to be higher from the product perspective, right? So how we do this? So we strive to achieve this alignment where cascading the goals. And this through a unified process between the tracks, so they're aware of the context, what's happening. And the way how it's done is the yearly company strategy. We set this on the whole org level, which includes the product component as well. It translates into the product big rocks, and that's we have for the year. Then it cascades into the product roadmap by track on the quarter level, especially in the very beginning. Obviously, you can think about the Q3, Q4 with the very low probability and the clarity, which will probably change, which again, within the quarter translate into unified backlog on the track level. That's how you can think about this. So each track, they are bringing those ideas. They're not coming from the top. So usually the way how it works is like we share this yearly company strategy with the tracks. So they start thinking like how they can contribute this, bring the ideas, and we have this, the meeting between the track leaders and the leadership on the product big rock. So we pick some of them, reflect in the yearly strategy, but then they also have some space for pebbles and sand, like the little stones and sand, different tasks within the quarter, so they can also pay some technical debt, maybe do things they wanted, maybe do an experiment, so they're not like bloated with the work about the big rock on. That's kind of like the way how it is cascading.
What is important, this quarterly planning has benefits, like you know exactly what you're going to do, but it also bring the locking down of the stuff for the quarter. And in our case, it's sometimes bringing the wave in the development. So on the beginning of the quarter, we start investigating how we'll perform the goals of the quarter. Somewhere in the middle, we are reaching up the speed. And at the end, we're like finishing up. And then again, like it's like the small break and again another quarter. So it's making the wave. It's kind of the side effect of this kind of the planning.
It's actually important that you make those plans at the same time visible to the rest of the organization. So we use Coda for this. And here you can even see that. So we documented all the quarters with all the plans over those like years, 2 years, we use Coda. So there's a product plan and strategy here. So we also have by tracks, they have their own projects. So they track all the progress there. And at any particular moment, you can go there, see the progress, see the status, see what they decided to work on. So it's very organized. And so Eugene said this, yeah, you can set amazing goals, but if you don't track and review them, like that's a path like to not to success, to failure, right? Because so what usually happens, you set the goals, you meet at the end of the quarter and like, oh my God, we were busy with other stuff, right? And so you also need to introduce this review cadence so everyone knows like what they're working on and they are kept responsible for the thing. So the way how we do this is like we have this monthly track reviews with the leadership team from the track every end of the month. So we have a sync with them. Usually the first month is more about the outlook for the quarter. The second month is like how is the performance, how we're tracking and trending down the plan, and end of the third month is the quarter review, what we achieved. As a part of those reviews, we also talked about the teams, how they're doing, like what are the other metrics, but I think it's a topic for even separate discussion. Roughly, if we're good and organized, roughly mid of the quarter, we start the planning of the next quarter. If we're disorganized, so we usually start this like the first week of month 3, right? Yeah. That's how it works in our case. Then the way how it works, like on the whole organization level, we tend to reflect on the big rocks and the company strategy. And you can log the company strategy for the year, but like, what if something changes? Like you should have this flexibility, and we do have flexibility at any particular moment to go and change everything, right? So we're not like, oh my God, we set this yearly company strategy, we're not touching this. No, but usually it happens like every month, like every quarter we look at this, but we tend to have, this midpoint in the year, which is actually approaching on our side, to have the offsite and reflect on the H2 second half of the year. Because as you remember, and as you see on the picture, like clarity of those 2 quarters, it was like not very clear in the very beginning. So we tend to replan and make it very clear for those next 2 quarters in the mid of the year. So that's how we do this. It may trickle down to the changes in the strategy and the changes in the big rocks and the changes in some of, like what we do essentially as the product team. Also, in many cases, coming from the bottom to the top.
There is the question, going back to tracks with the whole current structure, what is the average goals achieved sprint delivery rate? I will answer it at the end. I understood it's like, how many sprints did you achieve the goals? I will answer it in a second.
Sounds good.
Continue.
And
yeah.
So this is a sprint review. And we have, I think, amazing process, like how we handle sprint review. Like every 2 weeks, we have like a mini conference, like I come to this and it's like, it's a like a Christmas celebration, like with a bunch of gifts every 2 weeks. And so we track this in Coda, like there is a schedule, like a mini conference, all the teams like presenting what they did, and we're constantly showing the progress. So goals review and also showing the progress is those 2 important components, which allows you to stay on goals and then change them depending on the way how it works and how it goes. Now, we talked about this 4 pillars, in our opinion, like how we structure and manage organization: goal, structure, enablement, and culture, right? And you can ask, okay, our topic was like, how do you work in this turbulent time, and how it actually connects to what you just said. There's an individual in the center, because in our tech space, like our goal is individuals and the people who work on the ideas we have, like write software, et cetera, right? It's very different from other businesses. So the center is the person here. And when we think about how everything what we talked about affects the individual, in my opinion, it actually helps to stay in this like safe and very clearly understood environment to produce when the outside world is crashing and unstable. From the structure perspective, so you know who your manager is, it's not changing, you know your team, they're supporting you, social connections are not changing, you know like who to go to. And so for example, with the war in Ukraine, so we have like specific people focusing on specific teams, checking in like how the people are doing pretty much daily, like so we understand who needs help. And there is no way you can give it to HR, because there is no way to scale it this way. We have 250 people, like in engineering on that. And with this structure, we can scale it. So, and there is a strong connection, social connection between the person and the team and the manager and the overall track, etc. So on the culture, the company is supporting me through this tough time. So we talked about the relocation, the budget, programs like safety in your job. If you need to take a sabbatical for your health, or you're volunteering, go and do this. Again, it's a part of the culture and we support you. On the enablement, especially important in the remote world. Imagine you're a new developer joining the company. Like, I have no idea how you write microservices, how to monitor, how to launch this, how to publish this, how to go through the pipelines, how to release it. If you have tools and you don't need to run and like figure this out like with a bunch of people who you don't know, it slows you down, also creates a lot of stress. and it's not very productive. So you start thinking, okay, like I just need to figure out all this crap, like to write this like 5-line of code. Like, should I even do this, right? And the goals, if I understand what's the expectation and what are the game of rules and what's the expectation from the team, from the track, becomes very clear to me, like what I need to do, right? And it's also expectation of what we expect from the people. For example, when all this started in Ukraine, we messaged people, hey, we don't expect you to work. We don't expect. You don't need to worry, like mentally worry about, hey, I'm not working, like what's going to happen with me. It's very clear. It's an expectation. And also goals of the company is very clear, so you can keep them and manage and manage them. So, and again, trying to combine all this together, it creates this environment which is like pretty clear, and you can focus on the things which are important and you understand what you need to do, all the expectations on top of this. So this is how I think it creates the environment we can rebound very quickly to the normal production speed, and people feel safer and, you know, like more focused with the ability to work even in unstable time. Is it so amazingly working? No. I mean, we have many problems, like some things like we need to fix still, but fundamentally, that's the framework we're building. That's the way how. Eugene, would you like to add anything here?
No, I think we can go to questions.
And yeah, question then. Thank you very much.
Question. Thank you. So getting back to the question regarding how many, what is the achievement rate? What is the achievement rate of the sprint goals? I've took a look. So for before the war, it was for some tracks one sprint out of 3 is not achieved the goal. So the goal the team set is not achieved. In the other sprint tracks, it's 1 out of 4. So it's
66 and 75.
Yeah, it can be like it can be good or bad. I don't know, fairly saying.
But I think also what's important is, while looking at the sprint achievement is the good thing, I think it's also tactical. So at the end of the day, so what's important is to make this like business impact and the change on the quarter level, right? So, and if you didn't achieve some sprints, but then like you did an experiment which moved the needle, it doesn't matter like if you achieved or not.
Yeah. The other question is, who is owning, facilitating overall alignment of the goals and process around them? Like Sergey showed in Coda.
So we have 2 amazing people. One of them is Eugene. He is here. And another is Ilya. That's our head of product operations. So usually we organize, like those 2 people organize this, and we participate in this facilitation. Is this process, not facilitation? In this process we participate.
In this process, yes. Also, like we have various places where we having the feedback regarding the goals and the progress regarding the goals. For example, we have the OKR for the quarter, and there are some initiatives that contributing to this OKR. We are tracking the OKR progress at least 4 times during the sprint. So first of all, that's the sprint planning, because we planned according to goals. And then we have at least 2 product backlog refinements, like once in a week. And every product backlog refinement is starting with the goals, where are we going, what we will refine to make this goal happen. And then we have this common sprint review. I've shared, by the way, the link how we do this into the channel. That's another place of the global alignment of the last 2 weeks progress. It's like this.
And I think tactical alignment usually is not a problem. So, but the tactical alignment tend to mask the vision alignment and the bigger picture alignment. That's where you need to come back to this and have like a higher level conversation, not about, hey, we did those like 2 sprints. You need to have a conversation like, are we going in the right direction? You know, like, should we abandon this project and like change to something because it's not producing? You might be on track to deliver, but the environment might change. And this is like the thing which we're trying to figure out on our side, like to have those like more abstract conversation and alignment. This is happening on the solution side. I think we'll eventually introduce this on the product as well.
More questions? Guys, ask questions. Questions. We can answer a couple of.
And they might be not necessarily connected to this particular framework or the structure.
They can
basically about anything.
They can be related to anything. By the way, we are hiring in Ukraine. So if you have some friends, if you are looking for the job, we are always looking for the good front-end developers, for Java engineers, Python, quality assurance, Scrum masters. So we have a bunch of open positions.
Yeah, and I've seen some posts on Facebook about the, you know, like the also speeches about the how do we handle the situation from the work perspective when the customers don't want to work with Ukraine, or like the challenges of finding new customers. So we're lucky enough, don't have this problem because we have a product organization. We're growing significantly. And so we're looking for a great talent. And again, part of the culture, we made a decision to invest in Ukraine, to support Ukraine in this tough time. We do understand that not necessarily all the companies think about it this way. We want to invest and we want to support, and we continue hiring pretty aggressively in Ukraine. So happy to support anyone who maybe lost the job or, I don't know, the salary decreased or something.
Another question. What will be next? What improvements will be next?
To the structure?
Anyways.
I assume.
To the structure.
To the structure. So we're an interesting, point right now where I think it all works, but now we need to add more growth lever on the company side and introduce new things and the fix existing things, but also introduce new things. And I think it will be transforming the organization because we will see more and more independent pieces. At the same time, we'll need to connect them together with the unified vision, because initially PandaDoc, not initially, now, right now, PandaDoc is the all-in-one platform, and we want to have this unified experience in the platform. And when we're launching a new product inside, so it should be, the experience should be the same, and so it should plug into the system. That's why we have those like challenges with the SaaS Foundation, introducing this like a platform piece, or like call it whatever, like foundational piece, right? But then also alignment on the architecture, software, technical side, like how do we do this that's pluggable? And we're learning how to do this with architecture console. I think more of this alignment will be needed for us to grow and produce more, but in a very consistent manner. Not like a Wild West, like when you do whatever you want and launch, and then like just don't sleep at night because you need to fix all the stuff, in a more consistent manner. And from one side, this is like slowing down organization, right? From another side, so you need to find this like the perfect point between the consistency and the speed. That's going to be the main challenge for us.
Mm-hmm. There is two questions related to hiring. Are you hiring Scrum Master in Portugal? Yes, we are hiring Scrum Master in Portugal. Mm-hmm. The other question is the only mention on the job vacancy in Ukraine. The only one mention of.
Oh, we need to fix it. We need to fix it.
That's
automatically coming from Greenhouse.
Yeah.
And so somebody already raised this question, so I think it's something is broken there.
So if you just open and I send it to chat careers page, and you are not. You shouldn't go to remote Ukraine, go to remote Europe, and you will find all Ukrainian positions.
Yeah, you can open all the positions. If it's open, we hire for this in R&D specifically, product and engineering, we hire it in Ukraine.
Yeah. Another question: how many teams are overseen by one product manager, one Scrum Master, one engineering leader, and one design leader? Are you able to comment and show the organizational chart of R&D and engineering?
I think we have it.
I don't think we have it, but I can tell you, there is, in every track, there is one product director who is playing the role of the area product owner, and this product manager is responsible for ordering the backlog for this particular track. And he or she might have a team of the product managers who is working within this track. It might be
usually three, four people.
Yeah, 3-4 people. So inside the same track, there are 2 or 3 Scrum Masters. Usually one Scrum Master working with 2-3 teams. You might say that's like a lot, but the Scrum Master is not babysitting teams. We have like pretty straightforward self-managed teams. They can lead the events by themselves. So it's more like teaching them to become better teams. Engineering manager is also like leading 2-3 team. So you can count like in every track, there is the engineering director and like 3 engineering managers. Designers, 2 designers per track, I think.
Roughly 2, maybe 3 in some of the areas which are bigger. And also design lead as the senior designer or group designer.
Yeah. In average in track, it's 4 to 6 teams, but there are big tracks like growth, 7 teams, like document as an app, 8 teams. So that's more people there, right? More Scrum Masters, more designers, more people working there. Any interesting cases of failed ideas? Maybe something you did in the organizational design and later understood that it was a bad idea.
Oh, many. Many. I think Eugene had a presentation, pretty interesting presentation about the 10 experiments we ran.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we struggled a lot with the experts.
Oh, and, that was awful.
So when we had certain people responsible for certain areas and with all the knowledge about these areas, and we had challenges like how to distribute this knowledge, but without like disruption, and also with the same time when the teams need to work on something. So it was like a big challenge, and I think it's kind of like it was half done, and we kind of like a half failed with this, and yeah, so this was not very smooth. What else?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we also launched a couple tracks, like when we didn't think about like how to staff those tracks. Like, so we have an idea, like SaaS Foundation, like, okay, so let's launch the track. So we launched the track, there are no people to work on the track. And so we, like you're cherry picking, if you're cherry picking, you break this social connections. So you cherry pick, you have some expectation for the track, but they don't have like a team which worked and kind of like, played together. They still need to hire a lot of people. It's kind of, like, so you need to plan this way in advance if you want to do this. So kind of like half failed with this too.
We also changed tracks because we decided that it should be done in one way. Then we find out that the goal we set for this track is like useless. Changing. Let it be changing. And then we decided that these guys should do some other stuff, not that they made before.
I think we also had challenges when we put this architecture team in the platform. But if you remember what platform team does, so they do a tool set, tooling, and enablement. But the architecture is actually very close to the vision and the product and to the teams rather than the platform. So, and when we put the architecture team in the platform, it actually did not, like align very well with the vision of the track. And so we struggled a little bit with this. So we introduced the office of CTO and moved the architecture team there. And I think that's when it started flying, because now they oversee the whole vision across the whole app, and now they understand of all the pieces because they were like in a specific area and a little bit disconnected. So that's another one.
Yeah, so many things.
Yeah, we should do another presentation for the failures.
Yeah, we should do another presentation for the failures. Okay, more questions? Let it be one more and we go.
Oh, we're pretty good in time.
We are very good in time. Any advice to those who would like to start the transformation?
Don't start with transformation. Don't call it transformation. This is I'm telling you, this is an advice. Say it as like, hey, we're just like improving what we have. Because usually, so what happens like when you have a big event, you also have a big expectations out of this event.
Oh, yes.
So you come to your team and say, all right, guys, now we're going to be doing a transformation. So we're going to be working this and that, like we're expectations this. You do this and then it flops, and it's like, oh my God, we did this transformation, like nothing worked out, like it's harder to work than it was, like let's go back to what. If you approach this as a set of experiments and improvements to what you have, but you achieve the same type of end goal, this is actually lands much better because this is very evolutional and you can change this down the road if something doesn't work. Because the first attempt when we did this was like pretty painful. And so we did that, like the transformation went pretty smooth in terms of the organization, like the self-organized teams, how they pick the teams and everything. But then when we started working, so we realized that there are problems with this, like experts, there is problem with the sharing responsibilities. The teams, they lost the, like ground with some of the practices they worked on, but they were not replaced with the new practices, or the new practices didn't land really well. And that's where we had the most of the challenges. If we would approach this like slightly differently, like optimizing the things, we might actually smooth this out a little bit. So, and when I say don't call it transformation, it's kind of like referring to this, like maybe do this like a little bit more iteratively than just big bang type of thing, because big bang can go bad.
Yeah, this transformation word then beat us a lot of times. It was like, oh, we remember the transformation.
Yeah,
like nothing really critical happened, but they remember the transformation.
That's why we didn't call introducing track transformation 2.0. Yeah. Because it wouldn't land.
It wouldn't land. But now I didn't hear this problem of the transformation.
Now like, it's
for the year or so. Now it's good. Before we didn't start on transformation. Good. So,
all right, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone who joined today. And if you have any more questions, so we're always available in social media, Facebook and LinkedIn, Eugene and me. Again, want to express the full support and support Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine and hope everything will turn out great for your country, and we'll pay our share to supporting the country as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sergey. Thank you, our guests. See you soon.
See you. Goodbye.
Bye.